of Lodo. He operated Wynkoop Brewing Company, which he opened in 1988. He was also a geologist for Buckhorn Petroleum from 1981 to 1988. Governor Hickenlooper went on to serve as mayor of Denver from 2003 to 2011, during which time the city hosted the 2008 Democratic National Convention. He earned both a BA and MA from Wesleyan University. Please welcome Governor John Hickenlooper. He was right here. I know you all think I'm lying, but he was. We'll have to give him another round of applause when he makes his way in. Now you're like, why did I stay in my seat? I wish I was a comedian. If I was, I'd have great jokes to tell you, but I'm not a comedian, I'm a journalist. Oh, well, or you can say that about politicians. Just kidding. They kept saying, move it up, move it up. I could sing. If this was karaoke, I'd be awesome. I know half of you would be awesome. You don't want to. Not carry on. We were making up for the Asian time that we started with, and we started 15 minutes late. It's kind of what we call Asian time, because we tend to be 15 minutes late. Like if you ever get invited to, he's being rescued. Oh, here he is.
I should have taken the stairs. I apologize for being a little bit late, but we were one floor down. Thank you all for being here and giving all of us candidates a chance. There is something wonderful about these elections where you're going to hear a lot of different things from different people, and you get to decide and make the decision on who you want to support, what direction you want the state to go. Obviously, I am committed to trying to help the state go forward and continue its upward trajectory. That is not true of all the candidates. I remember when I was mayor, we had a wonderful relationship with the Asian Advisory Council. We had, I remember going to the first Dragon Boat Festival all these many years, and when you go to it now and you see the impact it has, not just on the Asian Pacific communities, but the amazing impact it has economically on the whole region to become a festival on a regional basis. You see that reach. I came to politics in a different way. I came from small business. I never ran for any political office until I was 50 years old. I was a very skinny kid with thick glasses. Never thought of having political efforts. And I ended up, when I came out here as a geologist, the price of oil collapsed, our company was sold, I was laid off. And I was out of work for over 2 years. I ended up having to open a restaurant, a brew pub, really just because there weren't other choices. But I can tell you that when you're out of work after about 8 months or 10 months, you see a different person in the mirror. It's not the same person. You're not the same person you were. You begin to doubt some of the things you took for granted. You begin to have second thoughts. And I know it took 2 years, well, I was out of work for over a year, then we decided to try to raise the money. I used to walk around lower downtown trying to find buildings and then trying to raise money, getting used to a lot of people saying no. I used to go and sit just because I was tired and sometimes depressed in Socorro Square. And there was a bus there, still there, of Ralph Carr, the governor of Colorado, who spoke out publicly against the internment camps and basically lost his re-election because of that defense of individual liberty. And I would get inspired with the library, and I read all that, Ralph Carr. So when I was governor, the first chance I was in southern Colorado, I went down to Granada, where the Apache camp was, and they have now it's preserved as a historic site, and there's a museum there. To recognize, I think if we don't keep those historic perspectives front and center so people can see them, then we run the risk of the next generation forgetting. And things that seem impossible today can happen in the future. I came back inspired to raise the money, opened the brew pub. We opened brew pubs in historic buildings in downtowns, not just in Fort Collins and Colorado Springs and Denver, but Omaha and Des Moines, across the United States. And that's sort of how I got into public life. We obviously worked, anyone in this audience who's built a small business knows that you spend 60 and 70, 80 hours a week. I actually released almost 30 years of tax returns. I don't think my accountant hates me because I never throw away my tax returns. But even back when I was, had been laid off and was living on less than $12,000 a year, I always gave 10% of my income to charity, and I always was determined that year was going to be the worst year I ever had, and every year was going to be better. Which is funny, we went down 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, we had the listeria epidemic down in Rocky Ford with the melons. I went down, we worked with a number of farmers down there, but really it was orchestrated by Jerry, really by his son, Michael Heracata, who got everyone to work together to make sure that the state was their partner, that we pushed back against this tragedy, but that it had the potential to ruin the reputation of Rocky Mountain Cantaloupe. And reminded me so much of what we did in Lower Downtown when we first opened that first brew pub. And when we opened my group, the rent was $1 per square foot per year. Just to think about that. That tells you how bad the economy was, and that we ended up having to really bring neighbors together, eventually get people to live in these old warehouses and create a community that really was based on coming together. And I think if you step back and look at where this state was 4 years ago, and where it is now, you'll see very stark differences. 4 years ago, we had $1 billion deficit in the state budget. The state capital was in chaos, there was no one working together. And we were 40th in job creation. You looked at it, the intervening 4 years that we've come through, and we've gone from 40th in job creation to 4th by the same survey. Instead of having $1 billion deficit, we now have a $650 million reserve. 97% of the bills that have passed in the past 4 years have been bipartisan. Right? You're going to hear all about, partisanship. 97% of the bills are bipartisan. And when you look at some of the other things we've done, is that bipartisan, that's the Colorado way. It's not trying to divide and attack each other. There's a wonderful Teddy Roosevelt quote about, pay no attention to the critic. look at the person in the ring who's got the clay and the sweat caked to their face, who's actually trying to make a difference. I think those legislators are trying to find bipartisan ways to get things passed has made a dramatic difference. We were one of 2 states in America when we did our healthcare exchange, right? That we had a bipartisan healthcare exchange. Hasn't been perfect, but we are without question one of the top states of America in this country in terms of expanding healthcare. We now have over 420,000 people who have health insurance who didn't have it before. At one time we had over 100,000 people that had pre-existing conditions and couldn't get any health insurance, right? We reduced that by more than 60%. If you step back and look at some of the other basic, we were one of the top 2 or 3 states that were lowering our percentage of people that are uninsured. We've also done other powerful healthcare initiatives, right? Our preventative care, both for state employees and within the private sector, ranks in the top of states in the country. We've now, over the last 4 years, we've offered to low-income communities, right, extended or long-term contraception. It's reversible, but upon request, long-term contraception that is either free or very, very inexpensive. And we have reduced, in the entire state of Colorado, teenage pregnancy by more than 40%. Right? We've reduced abortion in that population of young women by 35%. Right? This is a function of people working together, of coming together and really trying to through their efforts together, make a real difference. And we've done that in the economy. We did what we call the bottom-up economic development plan in 2011, where we got every county to create an economic development plan with not just the county commissioners and the economic development professionals, but every civic leader, everyone we could find in that county. We took all those county plans, merged them into regional plans, used the regional plans to create a state plan called the Colorado Blueprint. It's up on the web, and it's still go there. But the whole point of that was so that everyone in the state would change their perception that they would become pro-business. Now it's Colorado, so it's going to be pro-business with high standards, right? We're going to make sure we don't sacrifice or compromise the quality of our air or water, but we are going to be pro-business. And that's when you see how we come from 40th to 4th in job creation. If you look at how we turned entrepreneurship into a national model for innovation and entrepreneurs, the Kauffman Foundation ranked the top towns and cities in America for startups, per capita, technology startups. 4 of the top 10 are in Colorado. 4 of the top 10, right? According to Business Insider, we are now the #1 fastest growing economy in America. And it was, I think, a big part was getting everyone pulling on the oars at the same time, that we are really going to try and make this state pro-business, but with high standards. When we went to look at the oil and gas industry, which is a critical industry for no matter what business you're in, there's ripple down effect from oil and gas. And we worked with the oil and gas industry and the environmental community to create, well, these new regulations I have repeatedly criticized for, but we had both sides at the end. We were the first state in America to have methane regulation, right? And to be willing to go out and to measure, oil and gas wells, especially gas wells, to make sure that they're not leaking. The high-volume gas wells get visited every month to make sure that our air is not getting worse, it's getting better. And the oil and gas industry was part of that negotiation, and when we did the press conference, we had the executives from Noble, and Anadarko, and Canada sitting there saying, this is success, right? They care as much about clean air and clean water as anyone does, but they need a regulatory framework. So to say you're going to pull back and reduce these regulations is, I think, incredibly reckless. We had initiatives that were going to be on the ballot, that were going to make mandatory setbacks, right? They sound good in concept, but we have a conflict between people's private property, where they live in their home, their quiet enjoyment, but also oftentimes someone owned the mineral rights in that area right next to that home before the home was even built. Our challenge in this commission we've created, we got the initiatives off the ballot. We would have lost literally who knows, many billions of dollars in capital investment would have been pushed out of the state. By getting off the ballot, now we have a commission that can figure out the compromises. How can you make sure that you can guarantee, and I mean guarantee, the quality of air and water around where these operations occur, but at the same time protect someone's private property if they own those mineral rights? And I think, it's not just Colorado. This is Ohio, Pennsylvania, Colorado, Wyoming, and Texas are all dealing with this issue. We're going to be the national models. We're going to figure it out. And there are a lot of things we can do. We already have best practices. They're going to allow those places where there's conflict to be able to resolve it. I think that we look at what we've done, not just in healthcare, but in education. Again, it's the Colorado way. It's not the Washington way, coming in and criticizing, trying to tear down everything that someone does. The goal is really to say, all right, where is the sweet spot? Right? There's a lot of controversy around the so-called Common Core. The Common Core wasn't the federal government. It was all the governors of the states came together a decade ago and said, we need a way of measuring, of assessing achievement, so we know whether our students are doing well or slipping behind. And we can measure a student in Colorado versus a student in Delaware. So the Common Core kind of set some of those standards, but we create the assessments in Colorado. So it's completely, we really should call it Colorado Core. Our measures, our tests are unique to Colorado, right? And if we don't have a way of measuring student achievement, I guarantee you we will continue to fall behind in the rest of the world. I'm the chair this year of the National Governors Association, and my opponent keeps saying, wow, we'll get together with like-minded governors and we'll do this or that. We have, governors, the great thing about governors is, we work together, Republicans and Democrats, right? We're not as partisan. I can sit down with Chris Christie or Scott Walker, Martin O'Malley, the leading Democrat, and we can hammer out policy. We are, I think, we want to talk about what a state can do around immigration policy. We have 4 key platforms that, at this point, I think we're up to about 30 governors that we all agree on, right? Secure the border, make sure we have an ID system that works, make sure we hold businesses accountable so that everyone's getting paid above the table, and have a guest worker system that works, that is robust, comprehensive, and it includes high technology workers, but also includes tourism workers or agricultural workers as needed, right? We can, as a country, we should come together and define what that policy looks like. But the present hysteria around immigration is going to push our state and our country back, right? And that's, again, I think governors recognize that. We'll really sit down and say, all right, what are the compromises that we can get? I look at higher education. When we came in, we had 9 years of cutting higher education year after year. Last year, we put $100 million back. If you look at the debt that some of our children are coming out of college with, right? 2 nights ago, I met a young man who's a teacher, and he has a debt of $125,000, right? How is he ever going to pay that back? How can he, get married and begin to raise a family if he's got that burden over his head, right? We shouldn't accept that. I don't think we have to. We put in of that $100 million, $40 million was put into specifically for scholarships and work study, right? We've had another $30 million. There used to be a program called College Investment Soul. We took the proceeds from that. That's going to be the foundation for an additional scholarship program that's going to take revenues from the private sector and foundations. And let's decide on a statewide basis, is it 10,000 or is it 20,000? What's the limit? And we're going to say if someone grew up in Colorado and they're going to graduate from Colorado State University or University of Colorado or Colorado School of Mines or Boulder, Colorado, whichever school, right? Mesa, whatever school it is, there should be a limit on how much debt that they should leave the university with. And everyone, I don't care whether you're about to go to college or whether you graduated from 40 or 50 years ago, like some of us, 40, just so we're clear. We should recognize that this is a challenge that affects not just individuals, but our entire economy and the future, right? The 3 questions I think you should all be asking is, are we better off today than we were 4 years ago, right? And again, my opponent's going to say, well, he'll manufacture that we've done, cut this or done this, or these are, public jobs. We created over 210,000 jobs, right? We are the #1 fastest growing economy in the United States. According to Forbes, we have the #1 workforce in America. We've done all this stuff. We still have a long way to go. There are too many people we have too many long-term unemployed. It's still almost 20,000. I remember what that was like but we have the momentum, and we don't want to change horses in midstream, right? We need to keep that focus. In that same sense, that our healthcare, I mean, the 100,000 people that used to not be able to even apply, have hope of getting health insurance, what are we going to say to them if we go backwards and try to repeal the healthcare system that we've implemented? I understand it's a challenge and there's a lot of work to be done. I'm not denying that, you know, if I'd been in Congress, I would have done my best to make it a very different program. But it's a work in progress, and we don't want to go backwards, right? 420,000 people that now have insurance who didn't have it before. That's an important step forward. And part of that, as we scale healthcare, we are reducing, and I think significantly reducing, the rate of increase of cost. Right? For over 50 years, we were averaging 8, 10, 12% every year in terms of the increases in healthcare costs. Now we're beginning to see it down at 6%. I think next year we can come down to 4%. You know, we've got to take advantage of this opportunity to really use the scale to reduce costs, just like any business would. There's no question about that. So, first is, are we better off than we were 4 years ago? I think we are. Not everyone. We'll get to those and make sure that young people are still trying to get a job. People have been out of work for a long term, for more than 8 months. We will address that. The second question is, are your children, do they have a better future than they had before? And again, without question, I think our children do, right? We have transparency. For the first state in America where you can go on a website, in about 5 months you'll be able to go see the school that your child goes to, or your grandchild goes to, and see how much of the money in that school goes to teachers, how much goes to the building, how much goes to the bureaucracy and the administration of their school district, right? That is giving parents real power. And I think that finding scholarships and ways that kids can come out of university without overwhelming debt is a critical issue for any young person. So I think we can argue that we are on the road to making sure young people have a better future. And then the third thing, are we bringing people together? Because by every measure, this country has been built by people coming together from all different backgrounds, from all different countries, and rolling up their sleeves and working together. And the divisiveness and attacks that we've seen in the last couple of months is not the way that we want to continue the growth of this state. I want to thank all of you for being here. It is going to be a very close election, so if ever you had a doubt that your vote would matter, put it out of your mind. This election is going to have reverberations for very many years. Thank you all for your time.
So since I did such a horrible job introducing him, the delay, they're booting me out. No, I'm just kidding. Now it's time to introduce our second moderator, Jessica O., reporter and co-anchor at 9 News. I'm glad I get to be here today. At this time, I want to introduce our next speaker, Mike Hoffman. He is a Republican member of the U.S. House representing Colorado's 6th Congressional District. Hoffman was first elected to the House in 2008, and he was most recently re-elected in 2012 election for the U.S. House representing, of course, Colorado's 6th District. Then he ran unopposed in the Republican primary and won in the general election in 2012. So in 1972, Hoffman actually enlisted in the U.S. Army and was assigned to a mechanized infantry battalion. And so the following year, he earned a high school diploma through an Army program, and he left active duty after that for the U.S. Army Reserve in 1974, where he entered the University of Colorado and then graduated in 1979 with a bachelor's degree in poli-sci. Hoffman began his political career in the Colorado House of Representatives, where he served from 1989 to 1994. He then went on to serve in the Colorado State Senate from 94 to 98. Following his service in the state legislature, Hoffman became Colorado's treasurer in 1997. Then he remained in that position for 10 years until he was, of course, elected Colorado Secretary of State in 2006. He also served one term as Secretary of State. So I think time for me. Talking is done. Let's welcome Mike Hoffman to the stage.
so great to be with you here today, to be with the Asian community. It always has a special place in my heart. My mother was born and grew up in China, in Shanghai, China, and lived through Japanese occupation. In the Second World War, my late grandfather had a business in the French concession of Shanghai, China during that time, and then my late father, went to China right after the Japanese surrender. And so his job as a member of the United States Army was to accept the surrender, obviously, that they had surrendered, but to repatriate them back to Japan. And then he stayed on there as an advisor to the Nationalist Chinese, and then met my mother, and they were married in 1948. And my mother immigrated to the United States that same year. And so I had the opportunity to return to China several years ago and found my mother's house where she grew up, and in Shanghai, China. And so it's now subdivided in apartments, but the house is still there, and it was extraordinary going back there. But and my father would later fight in the Korean War, and I was so moved, and was wounded in combat there, and I was so moved recently when the Korean community in my town, in Aurora, put on a special luncheon to honor the surviving veterans of the Korean War. And very moved by that. And Jennifer Kennedy, you can applaud there next to young Joe. And so my heart is really with the Asian community here in my district and in Colorado. I've got a couple of advisory groups, actually three, different Asian advisory groups that help me on specific issues. And so first let me talk about immigration reform in terms of what I've been listening to from the Asian community. And the first is the H-1B visa program, and then that allowing students, particularly in STEM education, to remain in this country and to contribute to the economic health of America. And so there was a bill that passed out of the House that did that. Unfortunately, it wasn't taken up in the Senate because it wasn't quote-unquote comprehensive. But I do believe in a step-by-step approach to immigration, and it's important to keep this talent in America to help build this country. From my Korean Advisory Committee, some of you are here today, I've certainly heard about the E-2 visa program, and we together have written legislation to reform this program. This is many in the Korean community utilize this program, and that's where you come over and you start a business, and in exchange for that you get a visa to be able to stay in the country, but there is no path to permanent residency out of that visa. And one of the problems with the visa is that if they have to go back home for a family emergency, they have to go through the whole process of reapplying to come back into this country. And so what our legislation does is that it gives them the ability to go back and forth without having to go through the entire process of reapplying to come back in the country. There's lots of other reforms that need to take place in that program, but we've identified the most important one, and we put forward legislation on that. Into the Chinese-Taiwanese community, the biggest issue is the EB-5 program. And making sense that they're reforming and making that program work better. That there is a problem, and that's when you either you make a capital investment of $500,000 or more, or you make an investment in a business of $1 million or more. And but you have to, over a 2-year period, you have to create 10 permanent jobs. And so there is no certainty of that. in terms of how you do it. There's got to be a better way to effectively measure that. And so that committee, advisory committee, is working on that to say, how can we better do that program? It may be that one of the solutions are allowing individual states to determine what investments are best for their state, or what regional economic development hubs, in terms of what kind of investment do they need, and let's decentralize that within some broad parameters. But I think the EB-5 is a great program, and to bring that kind of capital, to bring that talent into America. I think the E2 visa program is a great program. I think you got to, and the H-1B, but I think we need to expand those programs, and I think we can reform them, and I think we can make them better. Let me talk about education for a minute, because that was one of the questions that were posed. And what is so impressive about the Asian community in my congressional district and in the state of Colorado and across this country is their love of education, is their dedication to learning. And so I think that the best thing we can do as Washington when it comes to K-12 education is allow state and local governments to make the policy as to what is best for their state, what is best for their community, and not a one-size-fits-all for the entire country. And what I want to do is encourage and to continue to encourage the Asian community to be involved at the local level with their school boards, to be involved at the state level in terms of with their legislature, in terms of shaping policies that fit the educational needs of their children. I think a lot of the Asian immigrants, like many immigrant populations, tend to be a little bit shy about really articulating what their needs are, what their concerns are in the political process. I think in higher education, we need more skills-based training. We need more concentration. This country needs a greater concentration in what we call STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math. And I think that is absolutely critical. I can't tell you how many job fairs I do where young people line up that are college graduates without the skills necessary to get a job much better than they would have gotten if they didn't go to college. The difference is they have debt. And so I think we've got to change our focus. When we talk about, to emphasize STEM education, to emphasize skills-based education at the national level. When we talk about jobs for a minute, there were three things that I was asked to talk about here that I know you're all concerned about. One was immigration, and first of all, I think we need comprehensive immigration reform. I think we can have a comprehensive approach without one single massive bill. I believe in a step-by-step approach. I think we've got to secure our borders and enforce our laws, but I think we have to have immigration policies that grow our economy. And I think, lastly, we have to be compassionate in keeping families together. I think those are the three central elements. But let me talk about jobs for a minute. And that, first of all, in this congressional district, there are really three large areas that have a federal nexus connection in terms of jobs. First is defense. The largest employer is an Air Force base, Buckley Air Force Base. And so the reality is we have a surplus of military facilities in the United States, and we're going to have to go through what's called a base realignment and closure process. And I support the president in doing it. I believe that every dollar wasted in defense is a dollar not spent defending this country. And I don't believe you spend dollars on defense for economic development. You spend dollars on defense because you need to defend the country. And so, but I also believe that we ought to take into, right now, that process only takes into account bases inside the United States. I think it ought to take into account all bases inside the United States and outside the United States in that process. And so I'll be amending that base realignment closure process and doing everything we can to make sure that Buckley Air Force Base is the most competitive base in the country, where it doesn't have to, it's not at risk to closure in that base realignment closure process. The second one is really the aerospace industry in this district. Large employers, satellites are a big part of that, manufacturing. A lot of small businesses that are suppliers to those larger businesses like Lockheed and Raytheon. And so I worked with Senator Bennett across the aisle in reforming our export control laws that were very punitive, very tough on that industry. And so we reformed those so that they have an international market and are not just reliant upon the federal government, so that we can maintain our technological edge in that industry, keep jobs in America in that particular industry. And lastly, healthcare. That the Anschutz campus is in the heart of this district. And you've got the University of Colorado Hospital, you've got Children's Hospital, and someday you'll have the VA hospital, and I'm working on that. But you've got those three hospitals, and then you have a lot of research and education on top of it on that campus. And so I've worked, gone through every academic program there, met with certainly the faculty, the staff at the hospitals. Now I'm going through all the research programs. We were able to find dollars within the Department of Defense to fund research for the Gates Stem Cell Research Center to do stem cell work on the ability to replicate blood through stem cells for wounded military personnel. And so I'm going to continue to look at opportunities like that to try and bring research dollars back to that campus. I just think that's so important. And then, so those are the three main economic drivers from a jobs perspective in this congressional district. Well, I tell you what, I've enjoyed over the years working with the Asian community. See a lot of it here. I think in this congressional district, it's Korean community would be the largest, probably followed by Vietnamese, and then Chinese, Taiwanese, and then South Asian as being that really are part of the fabric of this congressional district. And I think that Asian immigrants have contributed so much to America. I think when you look at the values of the Asian community, the values of hard work, the strong families, the belief in dedicating oneself to education. These are the values that will build a stronger America. And I believe that Asian Americans have contributed to this, the building of America disproportionate to the numbers. And so I want to thank you all for having me here tonight, today, this afternoon, not yet. And God bless you, and God bless you all.
Our next speaker is Mark Udall. He is, of course, a Democratic member of the U.S. Senate from the state of Colorado, and he was first elected to the Senate in 2008. After graduating from Williams College in 1972, he moved to Colorado's Western Slope and began a career with the Colorado Outward Bound School as a course director and educator. He did this from 1975 to 1985, and then he moved on to be the organization's executive director for 10 years following that, so from 85 to 95. Udall began his political career in 1996, winning election to the Colorado House of Representatives. He served one term in the state house, then won election to the U.S. House in 1998. He served that position until his election to the Senate in 2008, and he is now seeking, of course, re-election in 2014. Let's give a warm welcome to Mark Udall. Mark Udall will be here for another 20 minutes or so. I guess if we can go ahead and should we take another break? All right. on your toes here. You never know what you can expect. We'll be right back in 10 minutes.